And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. The State Senator, Joe Griffo, is our guest, and we are in Albany. In fact, we're right outside his office on the 4th floor in the Capitol building. We're talking about a variety of issues, including Medicaid. That's the big thing right now, isn't it, Senator?
No, we got some serious fiscal challenges. We're looking at a projected $6.1 billion deficit this year, 2 of which is Medicaid, 4.1 a structural deficit that has to be dealt with. The governor is proposing a number of initiatives that will add costs, but also has put together, and ironically today is the first day of the Medicaid redesign team. We don't have any representatives on that. There is a group that is meeting to talk about what can be done differently to save cost relative to Medicaid. It'll be interesting to see what they propose ultimately. And the structural deficit, I think he's looking at new revenues. The economy is very good right now, so as a result of that, you're going to see new revenues that may offset some of that deficit, but I still think we're going to have to make some hard decisions because they're structural. And even if you bring some new revenue now, ultimately you still got to deal with the problem as you look forward. So it's going to be a challenging year, and I'm not sure exactly what this new redesign team will be recommending, but we'll see over the next few weeks.
Well, one of the things that they've got going against them is time. There is a deadline for a budget to come out. Not every governor has met that deadline, but this governor has been pretty good.
To his credit, he has met the deadline within days, if not right on time, and sometimes early. And I agree with that. That is our role and responsibility. We have an April 1st deadline, just like your show. You know, you got to film a show and be on a certain day. You can't just pick the day and choose. So we have a responsibility to do that, and we should. So I believe we'll meet that April 1st deadline and close to it. And to his credit, he has done that throughout his tenure here in Albany.
Speaking of money, you were able to get some money for the Irish Cultural Center in Utica. Was it $1 million?
Correct.
And where does that stand?
So I'll tell you a quick story there, right? First, the governor actually appropriated money down in the city for an Irish Cultural Center, and when I was aware of that, I went to advocate for Utica because we were doing something similar. Fortunately, we were able to convince them, and they agreed and allocated the funding towards Utica. It's $1 million. It's for capital for the building. There are a number of rules and regulations that have to comply with in order to get the funding, and it's under the dormitory authority. It's called municipal capital, basically, and this was a special category that allowed this. So they're going through the paperwork right now. They, as you know, have faced some challenges of the grant based upon the configuration of the building and the tavern and things of that nature. So those are some of the hurdles that have to be overcome, but I know we're working with those who are involved with the Irish Cultural Center to provide the State Dormitory Authority the necessary information to prove where and how they will spend the money and have spent the money in the cultural end, which will be reimbursable. And as a result of that, I am hopeful that we'll see that money come through.
Are you confident?
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. Again, we've discussed some of the concerns that the state agencies have had relative to the building configuration. It was very similar to what the State Liquor Authority was talking about, and these are issues that are not new, that we brought to the attention of the individuals at the Cultural Center, and I believe that they're working on trying to address these. I think you got some good people there, and I'm hopeful that we'll find a resolution. That money will then be released, and they'll have that opportunity to receive the grant.
Bail reform, that's kind of an oxymoron, I think, bail reform, because when you think of reform, you think of something getting better, but this has gone the other way. Everybody seems, at least upstate, seems to be opposed to this.
Well, I think the overwhelming population now is opposed to it, and it's something that we had warned about last year. This was put in the budget last year, and we've talked about that before. Putting policy in a budget is not a good practice because even though it allows for debate during that process, and I understand the reason that executives do that because it gives them the upper hand in the budget process and forces people to deal with an issue that maybe the legislature may be more reluctant to deal with in a time and manner in which the executive would prefer. But it was passed last year, and we said that this was really going to be problematic. First, because they didn't include any of the individuals that are important to this process. Law enforcement, prosecutors, even criminal defense attorneys. You need their input when you're going to talk about something this significant. I recognize and appreciate the need for reform and support some aspect of reform in the criminal justice system, even relative to bail. But in this particular instance, it's been a very flawed policy, so I believe it's got to be repealed and restarted. And we're seeing example after example. We hear very progressive, liberal officials, like the mayor of New York City, even saying this is a problem. The governor now has said we need some tweaks. Yep. So we're hoping and urging that the legislative leadership and the majorities listen to people and undertake that change.
Speaking of things that haven't met well with the public, I don't think this green light proposal has met with much popularity either, has it, Senator?
No, I think it's another flawed policy. And again, we're a nation of rules and regulations in the state and the communities. You don't get to pick and choose what law you want to follow. Just take an example of you going down Route 49. You may need to get somewhere quick, but you still have to go 65. You can't do 85. And there's a consequence to speeding if you do that. Similarly here, they came up with a program which was controversial in providing this, which county clerks and law enforcement expressed a concern over. Yeah. They indicated that they were listening but really didn't pay attention. So as a result of that, now clerks are dealing with trying to authenticate foreign documents that they may have no knowledge if they're accurate or authentic. And that's where law enforcement also is concerned, because another part of the law was that you could not provide law enforcement any information, which you normally have the ability to do relative to licensing if necessary under certain conditions and aspects. So that's a problem. And now the federal government has taken some action. I know there's some concern and anger and frustration, but again, I think undertaking this law without listening to the people involved in this process, whether they're county clerks or law enforcement, has contributed to this. And so it's not enough to point the finger of blame to Washington. It's Albany also in how they undertook this policy and some of the ambiguity and the problems that could be associated with it. And unfortunately now, the residents of our state may suffer from this. So I'm hopeful that we're going to find a resolution to this.
All right. State Senator Joe Griffo's our guest. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back.